Hello, hello. Hi everybody. I'm happy to see you. I'm just glad that you're joining on a I don't know. It's actually not very cold where I'm at. In Nashville, Tennessee, for some reason, it's like 60 degrees in December, the day before Christmas Eve, and I have no idea why. I don't know. God's been so gracious on a warm Tennessee day. So, I'm excited to talk today. We're going to talk about estrangement, family conflict. Maybe that's on the front of many of our minds, not just as a topic, but just because we're all seeing family. We're all going over for, I don't know, whatever kind of holiday dinner that your family does around this time of year, perhaps. Maybe it's not like that. Maybe you aren't going over. Maybe for the first time, maybe on a run of 2 years or 3 years or 4 years that you haven't been over to family for the holidays. Maybe because that was your choice, maybe not. I just want to talk about all the complicated pieces in and around what it looks like to try to celebrate the holidays with people that you love. And specifically, some of the, well, hold on here. Yeah, all right. Just wanted to make sure we're up and away. We're firing off. I just wanted to talk about the intricacies of trying to connect with family or even hold boundaries with family over the holidays and just all the messiness that can bring up. I have a special guest, someone that I'm excited for you to meet. Maybe you've seen him on Oprah or all over the news or read his articles in the New York Times or the Atlantic. Maybe you've even read his book, Dr. Joshua Coleman. He's become a friend. Really enjoy his work. I've read him long before we met, and he was so, I think, crucial in shaping how to zoom out on this topic and just kind of see the full picture. And specifically what I want to do is bring him in and just talk about the communication breakdowns that happen around the holidays and how we try to say things that are from our heart in a way to even try to invite the other person to see us, but just where those communication things can break down. So that's what I want to focus on, communication breakdowns between generations and families. And Dr. Joshua Coleman, I could not be more happy that you're joining us today. And just thanks for taking time to be with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Matthias. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Well, okay, so I'll tell you why I shot you an email and invited you on. It's like we just have a couple days before Christmas coming up. And we just had, in America, we just had Thanksgiving about a month ago. And maybe there's been other holidays where we've already kind of had some interaction with the family already. And so it's like we have this pit in our stomach that either we're about to repeat kind of the stress ball that just happened a month ago, or maybe you're flying in. Maybe you don't have time to kind of like visit, several times over the holidays. So this is kind of the big one. This is like, all right, we're kind of coming in, we're talking to people. There's a lot of different circumstances how this could break out for people. But what's on the front of a lot of minds is like, how do I communicate? How do I connect amidst just so much heaviness or so much baggage in the relationship? So let's speak for a moment towards people who are going over for the holidays, but there's like emotional tension. There's like, maybe I feel triggered around mom and dad. Maybe the kids are coming over and you can tell that something's wrong. Maybe you're not getting along with the in-law. There's some sort of tension. What's like the first thing that comes to mind for you on how to hold this tension and try to navigate the holidays with some remote, I don't know, piece of health?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on whether you're the parent or the adult child or the sibling, because depending on what your role is in the family, it's going to determine what you're going to be triggered by, what your hopes are, what your boundaries are going to be, and that kind of thing. So if the parent, I mean, in general, if you're the parent, my advice is always to proceed with great caution, to know that if your child is estranged, was estranged, or on the borderline of being estranged, you have to be very careful and conscientious, because estrangement is just much easier to get triggered these days. And if there's been conflict in the past, you have to be prepared that it may come up again while you're together. So in general, be sensitive, say less rather than more in general. I think for both generations, it can be useful to be proactive about the areas that might be potentially conflictual. So for example, we know that politics these days is a big source of estrangement. So I'm encouraging people to say ahead of time, look, I don't want to talk about politics. Or if we do talk about it, I want us to be able to keep it calm. And if we don't keep it calm, then I'm going to either change the subject, or if it gets really bad, if you have like that crazy uncle or whomever, I'm going to leave. Now, if you're the adult child coming in and maybe it's the first time since you've been estranged, or you're on the borderline of being estranged, or you're not going to be estranged, but you have a lot of conflict, it's to really be kind of in harmony and conscious awareness of what your triggers are. What are the kind of things that are going to set you off? And ideally, if you have the kind of parent or family member that you can be proactive about that with in advance, you may not. But if you do, I think it could be useful to give your parent a heads up and say, look, I really don't want to hear anything critical about me, my career, my spouse, my children, etc. To me, that's a red line. And as you probably know, when you've gone there in the past, it hasn't gone well. So I want you to just know that I want a commitment from you that you're not going to go there. And then the parent might say, oh, just take it easy, be relaxed or whatever. You're so reactive, you're so sensitive. And say, call me what you will, but I'm just letting you know that this is kind of a red line for me. And it's really important to me that you respect that. So in terms of an engagement with somebody, that would be some sort of general ways I'd be thinking about it.
That's really great. That's really good. Yeah, I think my thoughts really line up with yours. It's like oftentimes, like in the holidays, like we carry all the baggage that we've been feeling all year into that gathering, because for some families we just don't see each other that often. We don't get together very frequently, but it's rarely ever wise to like initiate some sort of like really deep dialogue over a holiday gathering. Like whether it's like, I really need to convince you of this, you really need to see this, you need some like a dose of hard truth, you need to like, we need to have the confrontation, like I need to let you know, like just that it's too dense of a time. There's no so much charge. And on either side of the aisle, whether you're the kid that really wants mom to wake up and realize, the patterns that have been dysfunctional, or if you're the parent who's like, listen, like there's just some patterns of disrespect. You haven't been paying attention. You haven't been engaging in this relationship in a way, like whatever confrontation you feel in your heart that you feel like that is deserved or is needed. I never see the holiday meal or the holiday gathering, especially where there's lots of other people around, to be the setting for that. I think that most people would agree. I think it just kind of comes out impulsively. It's almost like we're just burying it and we just hold it, and it's almost gets so tight, and then it almost just spills out in a moment when it's like, oh, enough's enough. But I think yeah, I think that holding that line, like in the way that you're even being preemptive to send a text of just like, hey, there's just a couple limits that's going to make the holiday really doable for me, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And emphasize that you're saying it out of love and respect, not out of criticism or shame or humiliation, even though the receiver may experience that way, to just be careful to say that I say this because I really want us to have a good, close, loving, productive relationship. I think that just makes the other person less likely to be defensive.
Yeah. Well, I'll speak from the adult kid perspective for a second. Curious on thoughts on this. It's like, I think a lot of adult kids go into holiday gatherings with a lot of pressure on the parents' expectations of what that is supposed to be. So like I can even nail down concretely. It's like how much time we're going to spend together. I know a lot of families that are like, Christmas is an all-day thing. You're going to come over early, stay over, bring the kids, sleep over at the house. Like we're going to do Christmas morning together and then have a meal, and then we're going to hang out in the afternoon and we're going to play cards, and then we're going to like do and it can even spread out over days, because that's how it was when we were kids. And then for the parents, it's like, that's what we did. Like we grew up, we went over to grandparents' house, we did that. And then a lot of adult kids, it just seems most of my friends were like, we're going to see you for a couple hours. And and then the parents are like, what are you talking about? What do you have to do? Like, what else besides family is there? It's like, well, we want to have our own family kind of private celebration. Like me and my kids, like I have 3 kids, and we told the family like, hey, Christmas morning, we're actually going to do just as a family. And we meant just like, hey, me and my wife and our 3 kids just alone. And of course, everyone was respectful. In my family, everyone was respectful. I guess that's not an of course, but in our family, it was respectful. But there is disappointment of like, hold on, what? Sure. Like, you don't want to ever all be around? What do you make of that cultural divide and expectation? Let's just start about time. What do you think about that?
Well, it's not just disappointment, it's rejection. I mean, if your expectation, I mean, sociologists talk about the intergenerational stake, and that is the idea that once you have an adult child and grandchildren, you have this enormous stake in kind of continuing your line, the well-being of your children, the well-being of your grandchildren, and somebody who has adult children and grandchildren, once you have that, they're front and center in your mind. But I mean, I remember when I was a young adult, my parents were certainly weren't front and center in my mind. And I always knew that when I went to visit them or called them, it meant much more to them when I did. And I was, blessed with nice parents, so it wasn't a huge burden. But I always knew that if I called them, went to visit them, it meant much more to them than it did to me. And I sort of assume that my adult children feel similarly. So, so for the parent, particularly if there's been a change, kind of like, okay, well, this year, either we're not coming in, or we're going to stay at an Airbnb, or we just want to do kind of like what you're saying, we're just going to do Christmas morning ourselves, and we'll come over for lunch, and then we're going to head out and visit friends. I mean, to the parent, that might feel heartbreaking, right? So to them, that might be this huge disappointment. So again, I think being aware of where it lands for that parent and preparing them and not treating it as a sign of their being a narcissist or self-centered or cruel or mean or selfish, if they react defensively or hurt or whatever. And again, the more we can be proactive in setting up these changes so they don't feel disruptive to the other person, the better it's going to go. So you might start out by saying, look, we're really looking forward to seeing you. So the grandkids, this year we're going to do it a little differently. We're just going to do it ourselves, and then we're going to come over for just a few hours, and afterwards we have some friends in town we want to meet, or whatever. And then you have to give them time to react and say, oh, I'm really disappointed, or I'm really hurt, or I'm upset, and not go, why is it all about you? You have to be willing, if you're going to change the terms, to tolerate that the other person is not necessarily going to like that. And that doesn't mean something bad about them.
That's your last point is huge. Like allowing for the disappointment, and then because that's a human response.
Right.
I think that I have to acknowledge, like, Christmas, I remember me and my wife, we had kids like 28, 29. We were married really early though. We got married 1920. I mean, that's unheard of like now, but like we were teenagers when we got married. So 1920. So we had like 8 years of visiting family for Christmas, no kids. And I remember that being fun and fine, but then I remember the first Christmas with kids, and it was like someone, I don't know, shot adrenaline into Christmas, because it was like, holy smokes, the magic came back. Everyone's like buying tons of gifts and tons of things, and everyone wants to see you and everyone wants you over. It's just like you just became the popular kid at school. And I remember initially feeling the pressure of that, the expectations of everyone. Like one thing, because like we had our first around the COVID time, like it was like our daughter was born right in the height, I think, at the beginning of COVID. And so we didn't want anyone holding baby. And grandmas were really hurt by that. And totally understandably, like, oh my goodness, my first great grandchild, you're not going to let me snuggle and kiss her and rub noses. And we're like, actually, kind of pull back. So all those expectations felt so intense. And then I think like as kind of holidays went on, I just realized like, oh, it's almost like as the young family, I know there's lots of different circumstances, but just zeroing in on this circumstance, it's like the young family has the magic of Christmas kind of in the palm of your hand.
Yeah.
And then, those little youngins. And so then it's like, this is something that it's not necessarily like I need to kind of go along with every single person in my family's expectation, and to kind of hold in view as well that like, I want this to be a shared experience for everyone. This is what's best for my family, but also what's best for everyone else here. Like there's a sharing and then a courtesy for being able to kind of like hold this magic all together. And one of the things that really supports that, I think, is the family acknowledging the boundaries we do set, and there being almost a gentleness and a receptance. Because honestly, that relaxes everything. Because when there is that sense of disappointment, when there is that sense of like, what, you're only coming up for a couple hours and not Christmas morning, and we only get to see him, so many times, then it just makes the whole exchange, I don't know, tighter and more frustrating and less enjoyable, which I think ironically in years to come will make those boundaries tighter and tighter, and I see that in my clinical practice, certainly. Like, it's like sometimes these big kind of like, we're not coming over for Christmas, we're just doing it our own. That's often like several Christmases lined up of experiences that were often very small. It's like, hey, we don't let our kids use food dyes, so we're not going to let them have the desserts. What are you talking about? Like, and it's that little rejection there from the parent. The little rejection on the food dyes, the little rejection is like, well, are they organic? Oh my gosh, everything has to be organic nowadays. Like, or like the little differences that are responded to with um, condescension or just rejection. Not even condescension, but just voicing the disagreement in a way that kind of puts the other person on the spot, hems those boundaries in further and further. Do you see that pattern happen?
Oh, 100%, 100%. No, I think that's very well said. Um, yeah, I mean, even just disappointment has to be said really carefully. And I think this sort of to tie into the topic of individualism, because in the old
Mm-hmm.
days, you know, honor thy mother and thy father, respect thy elders, families forever was really the guiding principle. But that's no longer the case. Now it's much more about, for better and worse. I think there was good things with that we've lost. And I think there's bad things. There's good things from that, and there's also bad things from that. There's things that we've gained by the more strong turn towards individual happiness and mental health and growth, et cetera. And there's things that we've lost. On the both on the positive and the negative. Let's say on the negative, people had to tolerate a lot more just to be in the family. They had to tolerate small criticisms or big criticisms or rejections or disappointments and just kind of take it on the chin because that's what family does. And that wasn't good either. But what that has meant is that parents who were raised in that generation are still sort of communicating in that way. They're not sort of so aware that when they say, what do you 2 hours? You're going to come over for 2 hours? We barely see you as it is. We've barely seen our grandchild, to the parent, it's just expressing kind of a heartfelt disappointment. But to the adult child, it can feel like very invalidating, very hurtful, very critical. If there's a history of feeling criticized or neglected or ashamed, it brings up that whole web of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important things that it's frustrating to parents, but also true for parents today, is you do have to be more careful as a parent, I'm speaking to the parent right now, and conscientious about how you communicate. Because these small things, I think, as you're saying, Matthias, can over time build into a bigger boundary till you actually are estranged. And the parent's like, what did I do? Because the parent's thinking about all the good things that they've done. And in fact, many have done really good things as parents. And many of them were, in fact, much better parents than anybody was to them. So when the kid goes, I'm cutting you off, they're like, the hell you are, because the parent isn't really tracking these small kind of, erosions in the relationship. And I think it's such, parents do have to be more conscientious and more careful. But on the adult child side, my ask is to sort of be aware that these small things to you, which feel like setting limits, boundaries, self-advocacy, et cetera, to your parent, aren't necessarily going to translate that way. So you have to be willing to do some code switching. Both sides have to do some code switching to make this era that we're in really work.
Yeah, well said. I think about, bringing up individualism and just that shift. It's not even just there's the shift in priority, like you're saying, but there's also just the shift in communication style
Right.
that is so profound that I'm always underestimating. I've been doing a lot of research just into cultures that are westernizing, China, different places in Latin America, Africa, and some of the cultural conflicts and family conflicts that are rising in cultures that were historically collectivist that got increasingly westernized and individualistic as a result. And that's been so enlightening because I feel like in America we have like a small microcosm of that because America is very individualistic, but everything's by degrees, right? So an example could be just time. The time of, I just think that, if you didn't grow up with the internet, you didn't even grow up, let's say, like with tons of TV. You just had tons of time. And so what you did with your time was you spent time with family and neighbors and your
Mhm.
community. That was your pastime. So it's like, what are you going to do on Christmas? What else is there to do except family?
Right.
And so the idea of kind of secluding yourself or pulling back, or it just is almost unconscionable because it's like, what are you up to over there in your house, just doing things by yourself? Like just can we sit in the living room too? And it's
Right.
odd because like I think like what I hear from many people my age and friends is wanting to create traditions, wanting to create experiences that create that sense of nostalgia for our kids, and then wanting to just experience some of that enjoyment and delight that can be found kind of in the quiet, patient, small, less stimulating environments. So many folks, let's say 1980 and younger, just grew up with so much hyper stimulation. And I know this sounds a little bit like oh okay that's dramatic or whatever, but just genuinely I think like hyper stimulating environments like family, 30 family members running around can just feel like a lot for younger kids who kind of grow up. A part of it is always on the phone, or like with lots of different stimulus just kind of like coming at you from every angle, and not just in the present, but just growing up with it. There's just a lot of stimuli and factors to pay attention to, kind of always. And so I think that when we think about rest, when we think about holidays, when we think about vacation, so much of it falls into two camps. One is like fun and adventure. Like, but even if you think of like an EDM concert, which is like very stimulating, the style of the music is very much meant to kind of let you get swept away in the music, and it's almost like everything kind of drowns out and you're just locked into the beat, or you're locked into the moment. Nature, like so many folks my age love going out and just getting away. There's almost this retreat from the busy, commercialized ads kind of world that we're half addicted to, into something very quiet and contained and small. And so I think there's almost like sometimes family feels like I really have to kind of shore up and like lock in and take in all of like the little comments and the little subtleties and everyone's expectations and everyone's kind of things, and then make sure the kids are running around, and if they're screaming, I have to make sure they're okay. It's like, it almost can feel like an overwhelming environment for a lot of kids to kind of have the big family gatherings. And I just don't think that there's this almost, I'm wandering around and being a little tangential here because I'm trying to like kind of find the bullseye of it. But there is almost just like a different world that each kind of group grew up in that informs what feels restful to them. I think that's what I'm getting at. I think for so many, let's say 1980 and older, rest was the family. Rest was, I'm not working. I can be with family. And then for younger generations, it's like rest is like low stimulation and quiet. And coupled with that, there's an addiction to the media itself to where I actually end up doom scrolling anyway. And so it's like I'm trying to cut out everything, yet I'm still kind of glued into this technological world that I'm in. And you're just kind of left more and more isolated. I don't know. Is anything I'm saying sticking? What comes up for you as I'm wandering around that topic?
Yeah, no, there's lots of interesting things to kind of build off of there. I mean, several points. One is that parents today who've been raising children in the past 30 to 40 years have actually spent more time with their children than parents did, in the supposedly halcyon days of the 1960s. So today, our career mothers who've been parenting in the past 3 to 4 decades actually spend more time with their children than stay-at-home mothers did, say, in the 1960s. Secondly, indoor play has completely moved inside, on the boomer. So we were all of our childhood was spent outside, whereas today play is completely moved inside. So part of what has happened is what one person called the evolution of a hothouse family, where families are really stuck inside together all the time.
That's interesting.
Right? And parents have become much more anxious. They're much more guilt-ridden. They're much more, particularly in the United States, where there's been the evolution of what the political scientist Jacob Hacker calls the great risk shift, where there was a shift in the 1980s away from government and businesses supporting families with low-cost college, good-paying union jobs, where a working-class parent could support a family, put them through college, low-cost health insurance, et cetera. All that's been shifted onto the backs of parents. So the evolution of helicopter parenting, intensive parenting, tiger mothers, et cetera, is a response to that. It's a response to this enormous shift. And that doesn't happen in other countries. If you look in European countries, particularly Scandinavian countries where there's enormous support for families, parents aren't so oriented towards their children developing the principles of hard work. They don't have to spend as much time parenting them because they're not so worried that if once they get into adulthood, if they don't get into the top school or get a great education, that they're going to be floundering. So what that's meant is that there's been this incredible hothouse effect in families. And so a certain percentage of estrangements, this is kind of a bit of what you're describing, it's not the whole thing, but a certain percentage of estrangements happen because the adult child just is sort of had too much of the parent. I might have had at least two adult children say to me, I don't know how any other way to get my mother's voice out of my head than to cut off contact with her. And it's not a critical negative voice. It's a worried voice. It's an intrusive voice. It's a surveilling voice. So, and these are good dedicated parents. This is why the parent feels like, I was such a good parent to you. And in some objective sense, they were. but it can be that the kid gets actually more than they want or need. So a certain percentage of estrangements happen as a form of separation, individuation from the parent. Yeah, I mean, there's so
No,
much
there's a
more to.
piece there. Okay, I love what you're saying. I want to zoom up on a piece of it where it's like something that occurred to me. I was reading some book on just like the just some of the economic crashes in the age of the internet and just the ups and downs. And then I'm like, okay, so like the economic crash 2008. I mean, that's the big one that everyone kind of knows, where everything just kind of went,
Yeah,
backwards. I'm like, that was right when older millennials hit the job market. So if you're born 1981, 1982, you were 26, right in the middle of that. And not just with that, but also with student loans. Because like the script, I grew up with this script in school. I don't know if anyone on live is like grew up with this in school, but it's like, if you get good grades, you'll get into a good college. If you get into a good college, then you'll get a good job. If you get a good
yeah,
job, you'll be able to provide for your family and you'll have a happy life.
you'll be
That's
golden.
that's the formula. And so then
Yeah,
millennials grew up following that script. They just graduated, and then everything flips. And then we
yeah,
go into the gig economy, which was
yeah,
like completely deinstitutionalized job market. So, and what I mean by that was like, instead of you have to go get your medallion to be a taxi driver, you can sign up for Uber. Instead of having to save
right.
up money so that you can invest and buy a hotel, you can do Airbnb.
Hmm.
Like instead of even needing to buy, um, what's another one? Shelf space so that you can sell your art. You have Etsy. So
Hmm.
right in like this 2010, 2012, 2013, all of these companies that we use now just kind of started to birth. And it was like, you don't need a record deal from some label. You can just put your music on SoundCloud and reach people the way you want to reach them. And it was like, you actually
Right.
didn't need the degree so that you could get hired by the institution. As long as you
Hmm.
were skilled and your labor was valuable, then you could make a living. But you had to
Hmm.
do it with a lot of grit and with no pension plan, with barely any benefits. Yeah, like I can't, I don't know if I have any friends that are employed. Isn't that weird? Like, that's probably an exaggeration. If I really thought about it, I probably have one or two. But the vast majority of my friends are contractors or own their
Hmm.
own businesses or in some
Hmm.
sort of like partial agreement. So a lot of my friends are therapists. They are, most of them have their own room, even if they're a part of kind of a co-op of therapists, but they do private practice and and so on. And so it's just like that seems to be the norm. Is like there's no institution that's really going to watch out for you. They all
Hmm.
told you they all told you to go into a bunch of debt, to get this degree so that you could function in the world. The degree turned out mostly to be useless, unless it created a license, like in my case as a therapist.
Right.
That's what allows me to be licensed and practice. Like same thing maybe with a lawyer, same thing maybe with doctors and healthcare, obviously. But let's say you got a degree in communications, like
Hmm.
everyone I know with a degree in communications was like, what was that? Why do I have this? Why am I paying $900 a month, $1,200 a month on these student loans? Because I'm just working in marketing anyway. And there's a guy on Upwork in India that is fighting for my job because he can charge $8 an hour. I can't charge
Right.
$8 an hour because I have these loans. And it just like crippled the millennial uh, American dream. And so then so much of the advice that we get economically or job wise feels so flat, I think, from older generations that
Hmm.
maybe don't hold the full brunt of that. Even when it comes to interviews and how you present yourself, getting tattoos and the likelihood of you getting hired with a tattoo. Like there's a whole conversation when it's like, well, you're never going to get a job if you have a tattoo that's visible. And it's like, you don't understand. There's no jobs. I have to make the job. Like, I am the boss, because so the tattoo is almost superfluous, so I think some of that isn't fully appreciated in kind of the larger sphere of like how we're connecting and how we're seeing the world different. And and I think that kind of makes advice giving and connection harder and harder between generations. um,
Hmm.
there's no gold watch, coming for the millennial. Most millennials don't even know what that expression means. um,
Right.
there used to be a gold watch they'd give you if you'd stick around at the company for a long time.
Right.
And uh, yeah, so I think when it comes to family, when it comes to the traditions and milieus, when it comes to advice giving, when it comes to eldership, being able to build in and kind of equip future generations, there was such a huge chasm that opened up for those millennials early in their career economically, where it just felt like, man, what do I do? And it was hard to know, going to dad, going to grandpa, going to mom, if the advice from older generations could map on to this current world. I know I went 10,000 feet up there, but
Yeah,
what comes up for
I
you?
I like it at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
You get a good view from up there. So several things comes to mind. I mean, at this point, you've got Gen Z, those born between 1995 and 2012, right? And they're really struggling. More than any other generation, they have record high rates of suicidal ideation. They have record high rates of suicide, high rates of depression, anxiety, social isolation, lower rates of friendship, particularly for males. And what concerns me up for younger generations is the way the therapeutic culture leads them to blame their parents for why they're having the issues that they do. There are certain books, which I won't name, that have become very popular, I think in part because they make sense out of what the individual's feeling. The sociologist Eva Luz has this great saying. She says, today our lives are plotted backwards. What's a dysfunctional family? It's a family where your needs weren't met. How do you know your needs weren't met? By looking at your present condition. So a lot of millennials and Gen Z are coming into adulthood saying, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have attachment issues, I have low self-esteem, I'm not confident. But they're being invited to look at their traumas. And we have a very trauma-saturated narrative in our society. And therapists have become, we're the new high priests now. We're the ones telling people who to keep in your life, who to exclude from your life, et cetera. And, we do a good job with that. I mean, I think every therapist, sometimes hear people say, oh, people go into therapy to make a lot of money. It's like, therapy is hard work. I mean, I love it, but I don't think anybody necessarily goes into it to get rich. I think the vast majority of people who go into it really care about people. So, but I think there's a lot of harm that's being done. I think a lot of people are being misdirected to assume that their issues are their parents, which of course sometimes they are, right? There's real trauma. I'm not trying to dismiss genuine traumatic experiences, but who we become as an adult isn't just because of our parents. It's also our genetics. It's also random luck. It's also siblings. It's also peer group. And it's also cohort. It's also the generation that you're born to, looking at Gen Z. So I think there's been this enormous turn towards the psychological, which in some ways has been incredibly helpful and useful, but also I think is also a theme here of why so many parents get estranged today.
Answer this for me, because I've wondered this. I don't have a good answer for it. It seems like psychoanalysis was so bent on blaming moms for everything too, though. Like, you grew up with the same psychotherapy that blamed the parents for everything that I did. So why is it that my generation is zeroed in on it?
Because our culture would never considered estrangement as a viable option. It was like make the linkage between the parent and the present symptom, but it was never like your path to liberation, mental health, identity, and personal growth is going to be cutting them off. It wasn't viewed as a virtuous act of self-liberation.
But
That's
you
the way
grew
to
up,
do it.
but I know this is so confusing to me though, but you grew up with the psychoanalytic, like one of the dominant, not all, one of the dominant things was the Oedipal complex that was like, essentially you have the devouring mother, like sexualizing their kids, like the prevailing philosophy of like the 40s, 50s, 60s was the parents were like sexually seducing their kids. And
No,
that was
of course
all the
not.
mental health problems.
Nobody believed that, though. I mean, no,
Okay. But it just, so like, why weren't you estranging if that's what we all believed? Like, hold on, go on.
I mean, maybe like what percentage of the population A went into psychoanalysis because it was incredibly expensive, and
Yeah, you're right.
B bought the Oedipus complex. Nobody fucking bought the Oedipus complex. It's ridiculous.
It's so
I mean,
weird.
it's
Yeah.
it's an interesting theory. So we all were sort of trying to make sense out of who we are because of our parents. It's just that culturally we still lived the 60s, really up until the 80s, we're still driven by much more of a communitarian is way too strong, but it was still much
Yeah.
more of an emphasis on families forever, honor thy mother and thy father, etc. That was more the dominant culture. Today, it's much more therapy culture. It's very different.
What do you think about this idea? This just came to me. Is like, because you're right, like we were in a collectivist kind of communal culture, but something undid that. Something like
Right.
pushed us in a different direction. I just wonder if the technological boom of the accessibility of mental health stuff happened in the era of trauma research, that everyone in the 90s, because it just seems like, okay, so everyone's been talking about like your parents are to blame, your parents are to blame. But then like the moment all the mental health stuff kind of took a boom and was accessible to everyone was kind of in this current age of like kind of the trauma era.
Yeah.
When in the past it's taken lots of different, it's not just psychoanalysis. I mean, there's behaviorism, there's person centered, there's all sorts of different things. But it
Right.
seems like I saw it in TikTok. Like that was when I came onto the scene. Was everyone was paranoid about the pandemic and staying in their homes, and then there was like this huge wave of mental health creators that became like instantly popular. Like I went from 0 to 1 million followers in a month, and not just me, several people did. And so
Mhm.
I saw trauma informed, education, psychoeducation become more popular than ever. And then even in the books, like I just don't see many books written on healing trauma before 2019. There certainly were, but not as many.
Right.
And it seems like there was a technological shift that then emphasized and blew this way, way, way up, especially the themes of emotional neglect. Um, and I think complex trauma being widened from like the 1980 conception of trauma was like a near death experience, right? That was in the DSM 3. DSM 3 was like near death experience outside the range of human, experience. It was not your mom giving you dirty looks. It was car accident falling off a cliff, something like that. Like that
Yeah.
was trauma.
The parallel was the military. I mean, that's where it evolved from the
Yeah.
military use of trauma. So it was a much more extreme kind of. It had to be something that everybody could agree was traumatic. But go ahead, I interrupted your
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So now trauma's really been redefined. I mean,
Right.
and Bessel van der Kolk pushed for developmental trauma disorder to be pushed in, and his was not like a watered down version of trauma. Like he was just trying to, I think, speak to the experience of foster kids and so many, who had high ACE scores that didn't necessarily fit some of these unique experiences outside of the range of human experience, but had very normal experiences, but just very traumatic, and a lot of them repeated over time that created these huge reactions. And that was what I
Uh-huh.
saw the shift to be too. Is like trauma got redefined from big, intense, severe experience to you can have lots of tiny experiences that build up over time that create kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts. And
Hmm.
there's a dimension of that is the truth. Like I see it. I see in my clinical practice is like, you can, I mean, we could go into many different examples to prove that, but I believe that. And so
Sure.
the threshold between, does that mean I have childhood trauma and then the best thing is I need to cut off my parents to get space to then heal that? Um, or do I have an ordinary normative experience? It just gets gray.
Right.
It's just fuzzy for a lot of people. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. No, and again, I think it highlights the good news, bad news nature of where we are now, that people are getting a lot more help. They're getting a much bigger voice. They're getting the social legitimacy of being able to talk about the ways that, whether they were traumatized or just hurt. I mean, I don't think we have to say that only traumatized people have a right to protest or complain about how they were treated or even want distance from a hurtful relative or person. So the good news is that there is much more education, there's much more advocacy, there's much more social legitimization to talk about experiences that were deeply hurtful or traumatizing, and also to limit or even cut off contact with truly abusive members. The problem is that it is the gray area, and what that means is that somebody who's really vulnerable, who's looking for a theory about why they have the issues that they do, may latch onto something that actually isn't really the cause of their current state of mental illness or unhappiness or dislocation, and then they're being led to assume or believe that cutting off that supposedly traumatizing parent is the best or right thing for them to do. And I think that's a problem. I think that is a part of where we're at right now.
Well, I'm glad you say that. That's what I hold too. Is that
Okay.
it doesn't seem that the path is like we need to delegitimize people's experiences and say, well, it wasn't really trauma. You just need to relax. A lot of people
Right.
take that road, and that doesn't seem clear to me because even as a practitioner, like it's like the line between what is complex trauma and then what is adversity that really had a big experience on you, like I said, can be gray because we can stack up lots of little experiences and they can have a big impact. Death by 1,000 paper
Right.
cuts is a thing. And so
Sure.
the issue I take is, okay, let's say it is trauma. Why does that mean that we cut someone off and never repair?
Right.
Um,
I
why can't we
agree.
heal that trauma and then negotiate the relationship on the present day terms? Meaning there might be dysfunctional behaviors that they still engage in that mean that I have to hold a boundary. Like they might still drink, they might still be an
Sure.
alcoholic, they might still be violent, right? So,
Right.
or even less than that, they might be really critical And every comment that comes out of their mouth is completely negative and just has like this total tinge of judgment and shame and yada, yada, yada. So, okay, let's
Right.
negotiate the relationship on the current day terms.
Right.
What kind of intimacy is reasonable given the modern day health of this person? Seems to be the more constructive conversation, because when it comes to the
Yeah.
backlog of hurt, as an adult, we heal that. And I know, I would say most, I can't think really of an exception as far as like clinicians and people that I go around with and authors that I speak with at conferences that doesn't agree with that. We heal that. That's our job. We heal our trauma. Our parents can't heal our trauma.
Right.
Our parents behaving better does not heal our trauma.
Right.
Our parents validating our stuff doesn't heal our trauma. Our parents apologizing doesn't heal our trauma. I know that because I've been through sessions with people where the parents have apologized and the parents have expressed regret and the parents have, and then the kid is still holding on to resentment and anger. And it's like, well, it seems like it's actually up to the kid to validate their own experience and to hold space for their own pain. And if they
Yeah.
don't do that, there's no therapist or community or group session or whatever that can get all the way down to the heart of someone that is avoiding their pain. And so,
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said. In the Oprah podcast, there was a young woman whose mother abandoned her when she was younger, and she said, "I just don't know how to feel compassion for her." And I said, "Well, you can't really develop compassion for a parent who's hurt you or traumatized you until you were 100% clear in your heart and mind that you didn't deserve that, right?" And so, I mean, to that extent, it can be useful. It can be therapeutic. It's not going to cure it, but it can be therapeutic for the parent to take responsibility. And that's why so much of my methodology is around parents, finding the kernel, if not the bushel of truth in the child's complaints, and not to get into, did I traumatize you or didn't I? It's like, this was your kid's experience. You better show up for them and show curiosity and interest and compassion and empathy if you have, a prayer of reconciling. But to your point, a lot of the work does have to be done in the individual and the person who was traumatized. And you're not going to be able to really, quote, forgive your parents or even move on until you're really clear that you didn't deserve what happened to you. So working on that and becoming clear that you didn't deserve to be hurt in the way that you did, and that there are other pathways to healing that other than just cutting off that parent or rejecting them or vilifying them or that kind of a thing.
yeah, well, and this is, I wonder if we diverge here or if you agree in certain cases, because I think that there can be a reasonable season where someone takes a step away to heal. Even let's say the
Yeah.
parent is not violent, is not an alcoholic. Like there's not a present day behavior that is over the top. It's just that the kid is feeling triggered, overwhelmed by it because there's past stuff. It keeps getting kind of like stirred up around the parent. So they take a season to step away and be like, I'm going to do some EMDR. I'm going to do some somatic experiencing. Like I'm going to actually do like a structured, that's what I recommend, like not just like the infinite talk therapy that can wind on for 10 years and just makes
Right.
everything worse. Like I'm talking reprocessing, specifically like what memories disturb you, like
Mm,
what aspects of the relationship are genuinely bothering you. Let's go in
mm,
and build and reprocess, heal, and release that baggage so that you can build the resourcing and stability that you need, either to navigate the world or to re-engage in the relationship, or to reassess the relationship at least. And so I'm like,
yeah.
let's have a structured time where we go through the healing concretely, not just abstractly, and then we can revisit, let's say, from an objective grown-up point of view. Like it seems like you're assessing your relationship with your mom from the young you, from the inner child, from the kid who just feels like never got dad's approval. And I'm like, what
Mhm.
if we came to the decision of, okay, what do I do with mom and dad from the grown up, the 30 something year old, the 20 something year old, that's like, all right, I'm looking eye level across from another adult. We're trying to negotiate relationship. And usually what that results in is like, I would like maybe some sort of accountability and apology. If you're not willing to offer that, maybe I have a limited relationship with you. We're going to have
Mhm.
something, somewhat of a surfacey relationship. And I don't think that's a bad thing. A lot of people kind of poo-poo that option, but I'm like, you can be authentic within a smaller scope. Like
Right.
that it doesn't mean you're pretending. Like you
Mhm.
be
Right.
authentic, fully you, fully show up just within a more
Right.
limited scope. And
Mhm.
or you choose to part ways, and then I always kind of encourage an open door of just like, hey, people change. So like that doesn't have to be like a, oh, we're done forever. It could be a, oh, we're done for now, and I'm just going to see how you continue to develop as a person, how I continue to develop, and there's maybe an open door to reassessing as time goes on. How do you hold that?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think that it can be therapeutic in some cases if the adult child feels too vulnerable around the parent or too triggered by them or too reactive for whatever reason, for them to take a period of time where they are working on themselves, where they're developing more strength, more resilience, more self-awareness, et cetera. And, and sometimes that can be a wake up call for the parent. Sometimes it can help the parent see, look, I really need to change in how I'm showing up for my child. Now, not always, because some parents aren't able to make that move, and some adult children aren't able to kind of do the work that's necessary. But I think low contact or no contact for a defined period of time, that there can be value in that. But I think you're highlighting something that I wish was more out there, which is be open to re-engaging. So many people who cut off contact, like, I'm done, I tried, they're a narcissist, they're a borderline, they're a gaslighter, they're hopeless, they'll never change. And I know that because I see those letters from adult children all the time to their parents or to me if I'm reaching out to them to see if they'll engage with me. And they're actually sometimes wrong about the parent. The parent actually is willing to go do the work. So, so low contact. Yeah, I mean, sometimes having a more limited relationship with a really troubled family member, whether it's a sibling or a parent or a grandparent, isn't bad. I mean, it's probably what other generations and other cultures do who have the freedom to do that kind of a thing. So I would much rather see people having a low contact or a periodic no contact than just an absolute cut and dry no, I'm done. Because I'm dealing every day. I mean, I assume you do too, with parents who are just so heartbroken and so confused, and it's ruined their life, and they can't see their grandchildren. And a lot of these people are willing to change. They may need direction and help and therapy or family therapy. But yeah, that is my hope for those who have cut off the parent as a final decision, to be open to re-engaging and just saying or giving them more instructions about what your needs
Yeah.
and limits are.
Well, and I find that like so often, um, there, I should say, I see two circumstances that come up really, really frequently. One is like the kid that genuinely is like, okay, mom, come to therapy. Like, let's try this. Like, I have stuff. Like, we need to. I'm not just gonna like pretend it's not there. I'm gonna confront it, but I'm gonna like really try to engage with you or speak up. And then the parent really is like specifically holding their ground on a couple things. Like maybe there's a label that they really cannot swallow. Like, I
Right.
did not abuse you. I did not. I did everything right by you. Or just the gesture of a confrontation is viewed as disrespect. I was on a flight and a
Yeah.
man sat down next to me. I was on Southwest, and he sat down. He's like, "You're Matthias Barker, aren't you?" And I'm like, and I'm like, "Hello." And
That's
he's
cool.
like, "My daughter won't talk to me." And I'm like,
Right.
"Hey, all right, like gearing up for a flight. Let's go." And I
You're
just
like, I was
told him, like,
hoping to read my book, but I guess I'm not going to now.
yeah, I was like gearing up for a movie, but I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
well,
right.
doctor's in session. So I and he was just like, I did everything for her. I put a roof over her head. I worked tirelessly for her. I made sure she got good grades. She got into the best school. And there was like a collectivism, individualism thing that I was trying to kind of bring his mind to. I didn't use those words. I mean,
Sure.
because in a session, you're not trying to play
Right.
educator. You're just trying to get to the meat of it. And I was saying like, and I think for older generations, the role of the parent was, I'm going to make sure you're successful. I'm going to make sure you're successful in the world. And what that meant was you can feed your kids. And in a
Yeah.
world where that wasn't a guarantee, that
Right.
is like the full-time occupation of a grew up in the Great Depression, like grew up with
Right.
genuine poverty. He's like, you're not going to be poor. And then the
Right.
kid is like, you didn't emotionally validate me, have curiosity around my experience, anything like that. And that was like totally over his head. He's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I
Right.
can zero in it for you. I was talking, almost like wanted to grab his head. I'm like, listen, here's what we need. She means compliments. She means questions about her emotions. She means validating. He's like, why do all these kids need all these compliments? And I told him, because you're communicating the compliments, but through subtlety.
Mhm.
It's when you ask about her job, you are indirectly complimenting her that you're proud of her and you're excited about her job, right? And he goes,
Mhm.
of course. I'm like, the kids are not picking up those subtleties. That is
Mhm.
the language of an older generation, which is
Yeah.
through implication and through like essentially you mean love. When you're asking or writing her about the grades, that's a gesture of love for you. For her, she experienced that as rejection and she's not good enough for you. Well, that's not
Right.
what I meant. Paul, like, pause. It's not really about what you meant, it's what she received. Like the goal is not just that you express your love, which you did. It sounds like you did. You expressed your love. She didn't receive it.
Right.
And I'm just telling you, you need to put more postage on the mail. and the postage looks like emotional conversations. He's like, I'm not good at these emotional conversations. And I'm like, I don't know. Has your wife given you some tips before? Yeah.
Yeah.
My guess is your wife has tried to show you, like, and that was totally me just pulling out of thin air, but we're on a flight. I don't have time to do an assessment, whatever. I'm just like, because the wife is in good standing. And he's like, yeah, she keeps telling me I need to see this, this, and this. I'm like, what if you let her be your coach? Like, be your coach a little bit. What if when she tells you you're being too intense, you listen to her? And
Right.
we built enough rapport at that point where that wasn't too intense. He was just like, oh, mm-hmm. And there was like that aha moment for him. It's like, oh, it's the emotional conversations around validation and curiosity around their particular desires, needs, experiences, interests that build not just the physical provision of food and water, shelter, but the emotional provision of learning about who they are, learning about who we are, learning about how they, grow up in the world.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that is a very different model. And, that's what I want both sides, both parents and adult children, to really understand. It's a sea change in how we organize family relationships. For parents to have to be that psychological and communicative and insightful and self-reflective. I mean, my parents certainly didn't. I mean, again, I had nice parents, so maybe they didn't need to. But most parents weren't, they weren't having it with their parents. I didn't have these conversations with my
No.
parents, right? But this generation wants to, and I think overall it's a really good thing. I mean, despite rising rates of estrangement, there's also more people saying that they feel closer to their adult children than they believe that their parents felt to them at a similar age.
Yes, absolutely.
More adult children are actually in contact with their parents. More are moving back home with their parents because they feel closer to them, because the parents have indeed been much more psychological. But this sort of reminds me of if I'm going to do reconciliation therapy with with an estranged adult child and the parent, the adult child's willing to go in, I tell the parent, look, this isn't marriage therapy, where you get to come in with your own kind of claims about how hurt you feel and what your boundaries are and what you want the relationship to be like. It's more like divorce. More like you're like divorced from your spouse, and they're willing to give you a second chance, but it's going to be on their terms, and it has to be. And in part, I have this other saying for parents is like, your kid may have to forget you in order to remember you because you occupy too much mental space in their mind. And that's why in therapy, family therapy, I tell parents it's much more about you showing interest and curiosity and sensitivity and empathy, and don't defend and don't explain and don't push back, because your adult child has felt like being estranged from you is the healthiest thing for them to do, or they wouldn't have done it. So they're not really ready or able. Maybe they will be. But by the time you're in early reconciliation, or you're considering reconciliation, if you're trying to get a reconciliation with your adult child and you're the parent, you have to accept that it's going to be on their terms, or it's just not going to happen. So eventually, hopefully, there can be a discussion about what is triggering to you as the parent, and what the things that you're doing, how hurt you feel, etc. But certainly not very early on.
Yeah. Well, and I think one thing that lights off even a couple steps behind that is just the reality of being confronted and a kid telling me about all the discontentments and frustrations they have on the front of it, because there's a hierarchical respect dynamic that is so, especially I think in immigrant cultures, like people who immigrated to the United States, first generation. It's like just the fact that you are critiquing anything I did is this huge. I was in an airport. It's always happened to me in an airport. And I had a security guy come up to me, older guy, and he was just like, hey, are you a TikTok famous? And I was like, crap, I don't know. Like, what's this going to happen? And then he goes, why? And he's like, well, that young girl over there, pointed to a sweet, young TSA agent, was like, she follows you on TikTok and says that you talk about family estrangement. And then I'm like, yeah, I do. And then he goes, well, maybe you can tell my daughter how to show me some basic respect. And then I just look right at him and I'm like, you are going to love my content. You need to follow me right now. You need to go over to her and have her sign you up to follow me on Instagram. You need to join my membership. I was like, you really need to, you're going to love my stuff, because I'm just thinking like, oh man, we got to get going. I'm joking, but there's an empathy there, because it's like, and I try to explain this to kids, not to excuse it, but to explain it. I'm not trying to downgrade anything. I have this little like whiteboard here. Wait, can anyone see? No, wait. Where'd we go? Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's like, imagine, and I want your thoughts on this, so that's why I'm playing with this idea with you, but imagine you're in a world where it's like you live in a small community And it's like, there is one baker. There's only one. And so if you make the baker mad, if you insult him, you don't get bread. Like, are you willing to like share and be vulnerable about your feelings? And if he slighted you, or if he said something that wasn't validating, would you risk like the connection that going poorly if you lived in a small community and you had no other bakers in town? No, you would completely like shove that down unless it was a matter of life and death. Like, you're willing to give up your access to bread. You are not going to confront this man. And likewise, like even things like compliments or being overly flattering. Like, I don't think people in America realize this really well. Like, my brother is dating a guy in Japan, and I've been having lots of conversations around Japanese culture and just the milieu. And he said something that shocked me. He was like, we're back. He said something like, we don't give compliments in Japan. Like, if you're on the bus, like you don't say like, oh, great shoes, because how embarrassing is that? And I'm like, what do you mean embarrassing? Like in America, that's so normal to be like, you're killing a girl, like great shoes, whatever. Maybe not me saying that, but generally. And well, because then what it does is it starts this game of I have to push off the compliment. Oh, no, it's fine. Like I got these on sale. We do that in little ways in the Midwest and the South. Oh, I got these on sale. Oh, I got these on thrift. It was like you have to kind of like get the compliment off so that you can look humble. Because if you look arrogant, then people are going to avoid you, because arrogance is something like you see yourself higher in the hierarchy than you really are. And so not only is there a threat of me confronting someone because on something I'm mad about, there's also a threat of me like complimenting someone and being too flattering. So what I do is I literally take the road of the least resistance. And if I do anything, I communicate it in subtlety, because in subtlety, it's a brilliant psychological safety net. Because you can pretend you didn't hear me, you can pretend that and then there doesn't have to be a big blow up. We can move on like it never happened. We can just avoid it. And then I still get bread, and maybe I'm the blacksmith, so you still get horseshoes or whatever. And so I'm like, that is the psychology that has guided our species for all through, communal agricultural life, like from tribes to agriculture and onward. Just recently, we have something called role mobility. That's what it's called in literature. Role mobility means I have lots of bakers. If this baker makes me mad, I can go to the other one. There's lots of bakers with 5-star reviews. So if someone makes me frustrated, I can go to the next one. And so there's like a role mobility when it comes to connection and even like chosen family and friendships that is playing a role here. And I think that some older generations, they're like, I'm not going to overly compliment and flatter because that risks. I'm not going to have confrontations. I'm going to avoid it. And then I'm going to communicate what I'm feeling through subtlety, through suggestion, through little comments, through leading questions. And the kids are completely allergic to that because that's toxic. That is avoidant. That is controlling. That is gaslighting. Like there's these toxic label or what's the right pejorative labels? Diagnostic labels, bad labels that we're putting over these very actually like normative human behaviors that are observable in almost every culture that I'm starting to just question. And I don't want to overcorrect here. I don't want to like sugarcoat something that is toxic and make it into a secret good thing. That's kind of why I want to talk to you about it. But like, it just seems like when mom, makes a little comment about your weight, there seems to be like a world where like she probably thinks that her figure is what allows her to be accepted and supports her being in a happy marriage. If she kind of let her figure go, whatever that means, then she would be in a harder spot. She would be displeasing her husband, and so she would be in an unhappy marriage. And so in her mind, happy marriage includes being of a particular body image. And so she's trying to help her daughter fit that image out of a desire that she's not rejected and she's not alone, or that she's not, other people don't make comments or whatever. She's trying to save her from shame. And she's doing it through subtlety. She's not going to say directly, hey, you know what? I think your marriage would be supported by you looking a particular way. And so that means you need to get on a diet and like that would be way too direct. And so I'm going to say through subtleties, little comments. Are you sure you need a second helping? Like, is that the sugar-free version? Like whatever. And then daughters over here, like, you're so controlling. You're toxic. You're pushing these bad images on me. You're shaming me. And the irony is like, mom can't even hear what you're saying. Like, it's so like backwards to mom, because I'm like, what do you mean I'm shaming you? I'm trying to protect you from shame. And then daughter's like, no. The whole game you're playing, the whole like, we need to look a certain way in order to be accepted is something we're changing. We want to look however we are and love people for more than just the superficial outside whatever. And then mom's like, it's like it's bending the paradigm. And so it's just like I get so, I guess, grieved at the kids that are so quick to label the parents as toxic, manipulative, controlling. And I'm like, you're playing completely different communication and value games. There's a totally different culture that they're trying to help you align with. And to the kids' credit, it's not the culture we're in anymore. That's why I went on that whole economic tangent about like the collapse in 2008. Because I'm like, in that world, the only thing that helps you in the job market economically is your personal self-expression. In the past, you needed to get with the program so that your boss likes you. You needed to wear a good suit, not get a tattoo on your face, don't have the septum piercing because you can't get a job because your survival depends on being included in the group. And then for the millennial, go ahead.
Well, I have a hard stop here.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry. I went too long. Go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good. These are all great points. And I think that just also highlights the cultural difference in terms of therapy, because, prior to the 1960s, 1970s, even though, that's when we got into the whole personal expression, in the 1960s, that's when all the counter groups happened. There was still, therapy was much more oriented towards, particularly prior to the 1960s, towards fitting in, towards conforming, towards kind of like being part of either the family or the larger culture. And that, beginning probably in the 70s or so, radically began to change. So that now that therapy is much more about finding your true voice, your true self, your personal expression, your identity, and anything short of that and short of expressing that is considered to be a kind of caving in or conforming, and conforming is a really bad thing for younger generations.
Yeah.
And so I think I have to run, but I think this conversation that we're having is really useful, because I think we're just really highlighting these generational differences that, both sides really want a better relationship, but they're speaking such different languages. And I think it's kind of incumbent on people like you and me to really shine a bright light on helping people to have the tools, because we need them desperately. Yeah.
Josh Coleman, thank you so much. So grateful. I'll point everyone to your book and to your Substack, an incredible just array of resources that you've created for people, both parents and families, siblings, even, navigating these complexities. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, sir.
Great to see
bye
you.
for now. Great to see you as always.
Okay.
Oh, man, that's awesome. I'm just like so grateful, I think, that he's willing to engage with me on these topics, because I think, as you can kind of intuit, this is complicated. Can I just say something too for anyone who's been here for like the whole video, who just watched that whole episode? Like, there's two kinds of like podcast interviews you can have with people. So I'm going to put on my creator hat for a second. So as like the creator, marketer person, you can have a clean cut interview with predetermined questions where you essentially kind of lob softballs up for the other person for them to hit them out of the park. And it's great, but it's a performance. Like the whole interview is a performance. That's good. And those are good. They have their place. I think most of the most popular podcasts, the top 5, top 10 podcasts, are performance-oriented podcasts. That's great. But then there's podcasts that you're wandering around and you're tangential because you're trying to figure something out. It's almost like you're bringing raw data. And sometimes you talk over each other. Sometimes you're having two different conversations. Sometimes you're trying to you go on a point, it doesn't really land, and then you try a different way and you come at it from a different angle. And what you're seeing there is not as clean cut. It's not as sometimes you get confused, but you're seeing thinking happening live, And so that's what I hope you got out of this. Like, I'm sure I'll have conversations with Dr. Coleman that are a lot that follow a lot less of a tangential trail. But today I was just kind of hoping to get a little bit closer to this knot around individualism and the cultural divide. And yeah, I couldn't think of someone better to riff with on that topic than him. He's really thoughtful around it. He comes at things, from the parent's point of view most often. But he has an incredible space and capacity for the experience of the adult kid. And I really admire that. I know that this world of parent-child estrangement seems to have teams. Like, there's creators, there's authors that are team kid and team parent. But man, I tell you, when you actually get behind closed doors, when you're not live most of the time, you find that we actually agree on the majority of things, that there's obviously instances where adult kids need to cut off. There's obviously instances where the adult kid is in the wrong and the parent is being poorly treated. For example, parental alienation, so it's like, I think that everyone in this camp, when I say everyone, the names that I'm thinking of are folks like Coleman and Pillemer and Whitney, and like even Libsy Gibson, Mel Robbins, like these folks that are commenting on this stuff. I think there's generally a pretty large span of agreement. I think when I think about this live show, what I'm doing here, my options when doing a show like this is that I produce it, I make it really clean cut, and then it's more of a performance. Or I kind of make it a more raw setting where I allow myself to go on tangents and to think out loud. And so that's what I did in the interview with Dr. Coleman today. I felt it. I was feeling a little self-conscious at points. I'm like, oh man, I'm being a little tangential and kind of following these little trails. This is probably hard to follow, but I'm like, no, this is kind of maybe what it needs to be. Because I'm writing my book right now. I'm playing with these themes, and I need help thinking through them. Not just from Coleman, but from you. I need to know how you responded to this, and what comes to mind for you. Rachel Hack, yes, Rachel, that's another person that I'd put in that category. Like, as far as other people talking about this that have large agreement, even though it looks like we span into teen kid, teen parent. Yeah, I guess I need your help thinking through this with me. Because we're in just a unique cultural moment. That's why you saw me playing with like the economic stuff and then the collectivism stuff and the trauma stuff. It's like, this all weaves together somehow. All right, I'm gonna look at some comments. Does that sound fun? Do I have a scene in OBS for the comments? Nope. That's not a comment. All right. I was gonna see if I have like a. Let me see if I'm gonna look at the comments, but I want you to be able to look at the comments with me. Let me see if I can build a scene real quick. You up for that? And then we're gonna hang out. We'll do some Q&A in the comment section, and we'll continue on. What do I want to do? Do I want to answer questions on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, on Kick? Yeah, that's right. We're on Kick. We're on Twitch. Let me pull up Twitch. Is there anyone watching on Twitch? Is there anyone watching on Twitch? Is there anyone? All right, not a lot happening over there. That's a new space. I haven't even advertised it that I'm on Twitch. That'll take off when it's supposed to. Let's go over to YouTube. Here, some music while you wait. Ah. All right, YouTube. I see you. Not a lot happening over there. That's a new. All right, if you're watching on YouTube, go on over to YouTube to the vertical stream, and I'll answer some questions on YouTube. I actually have two streams going. I have a horizontal stream and a vertical stream. But we're gonna answer questions on the vertical stream. There's a bigger party happening over there. And I'll float back and forth between YouTube and Instagram. How about that? All right, give me a little bit more background music. Oh, too sad. That was sad. That's fun. That makes it sound like I'm in an old Western movie or something. And then he went to his horse, and he said, "Old Faithful, we'll get out of this mess, you and me. Just promise me one thing, that you ain't leaving. You ain't leaving my side, Old Faithful." And then he hopped on his horse, looked into the sunset, pulled down his cap, stared into that declining sun, and said out loud, "It's a good day. Good day to be a cowboy. And then he wandered off. Took his horse and rode off into the sunset. Okay, now, hey, look at that. Wow. Alright, so now we have some comments. I just feel like it's more fun if you can actually see the comments. Did you like my cowboy story? Probably not. My guess is views dropped intensely once I became a cowboy. Wait a minute, this isn't right. What the? Oh, no, we're good. It's just people joining. Heyo. Okay, there's some laughing faces. Oh, good grief. Okay, so now we have some comments. I'm going to be looking back and forth with YouTube and Instagram. I'll keep the Instagram ones up on the screen for you. Because I don't want to take more time fidgeting with stuff. Let's get into it. Oh, wait. I can flip back and forth. Oh, delightful. Sorry, team. Alright. How we doing, YouTube? Alright, Cowboy intermission has completed. What are you thinking? Thank you for being vulnerable in the conversation so we can see how you think and you two communicate together. Thank you. We all need that together, parents and kids. Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I like listening to you and Dr. Coleman process what's happening in our culture. Yeah. I hope we get to the end of it. Yeah, perceptions are different. You know, perceptions are built, I think... Oh, I'm realizing in the vertical this is a complete mess. Hold on. Sorry, team. I have two softwares going, one that controls the vertical stream and one that controls the horizontal stream. And we're here. Okay, now you can see. What questions do you have about where me and Dr. Coleman were talking about? What comes up for you? Oh, you helped me through a divorce. Oh, I'm grateful. We'll keep the topic on estrangement for today. Okay, so this is a good question. You're talking about, well, what's happening? Why? You were talking about parents, about talking to our parents. My problem is asserting boundaries with my now older parents, 60s, 70s. It seems like they don't like to be held accountable. Yeah, you know, I've wondered a lot, like, what holding someone accountable means. You know, I think that it seems to mean somewhat of like talking to them in such a way where they admit what they did wrong and then they comply with the demands that I'm making. I mean, demands don't even have to be negative or pejorative. Like, demands could be like, make amends, you know, or demands could be acknowledge the pain of my childhood and say you're sorry, you know. So, like, holding someone accountable is like not letting them off the hook. And letting off the hook is an analogy that I've never quite understood, because I'm like, it's not obvious to me you have them on the hook. It seems like the only one who's on the hook with all the negativity of the event is you. You're the one holding all the negativity. And often the parents aren't holding that. They just, I mean, they're trying to avoid it. You know, so I think that if we shift the frame to how do I hold them accountable? You know, okay, especially older parents, 60s, 70s, they don't like to be held accountable. I think it's more like we have to kind of distinguish in our minds, are we going to set a boundary here or are we making a request? Because if I'm making a request, then it's probably just pragmatic of me to do so in a gentle way that's going to encourage their compliance. And so I'm going to be more gentle in my language. I'm going to be more I'm going to recognize and validate their sacrifices and their intentions, their limitations. Like all those things are going to be things that I'll acknowledge, and I'm going to do my best to, let's say, invite the goodwill of my parent in making a request. But that feels wrong, I think, when you are in a justice scenario. Like, if someone hits your car, you're not going to go and just try to like acknowledge their limitations and acknowledge their intentions. Like, you're going to be like, no, you have to pay me back for the damage you made to my car. But I mean, think about that circumstance. You actually don't do that. You don't go up to someone and try to convince them to pay you back for the damage towards their car. That's not how that works. You call the authorities. There's an investigation by insurance. There's an authority you can appeal to that will enact justice on your behalf. So it's different. If your parent broke the law, you wouldn't be asking them to turn themselves in, right? Hold them accountable. You would go to the police, and then they would hold your parent accountable. The implication of holding someone accountable is that you have the power to enact justice. If you're in a mode where there is no such authority to appeal to outside of just the relationship itself, you hurt me in the past, you betrayed me, in the past, you betrayed my trust, then you are kind of on this weird, murky ground where you can't use the justice accountable framework. A police officer doesn't need to ask your permission to handcuff you, doesn't need your consent, doesn't need to get your buy-in. They can just, if they have a warrant, they can just handcuff you. You have to mix that with, we're actually in a negotiation. We are in a negotiation over the past, perception, the story, labels, meaning. We're negotiating the meaning to make over this. I hold meaning about it, you hold meaning about it. Some of that conflicts. And so you probably have to actually switch your mentality to being a lot more inviting if that's your goal, which includes a lot more acknowledgement and meeting them where they're at, which isn't fair. I mean, that's the big rub. It's like, that's not fair. Yeah, correct. That is not fair. And that's why I think that you're not obligated to be in relationship with people who have betrayed you. You're certainly allowed to get distance. That's what a boundary is, right? So you can set a boundary. And that is shutting off contact, And that you don't need anyone's permission for. You don't need anyone's buy-in. You can announce that. But you can't announce that you're holding someone accountable without the power to enforce it, which is mutually negotiated and offered, So I hope that categorically makes more sense. Practically, I think what that means is gentle, kind engagement, but from a place of stability, not people-pleasing. From a place of healing, not parentified hurt. There's a different quality there, different energy in it. The convo you had assumed that there was no personality disorders involved. What about in cases where one person is being narcissistic in a diagnostic sense? Is there no hope for the reconciliation? I think that narcissism, how do I want to answer this not in 25 minutes? The narcissist, there's an exploitive, damaging, aggressive nature to the behavior where it's not just avoiding accountability, changing topics. It's not avoidance on steroids. It's like aggression and demanding compliance. So in circumstances of personality disorders, which there are, like, the low-hanging fruit here is to say something like, well, narcissism's overblown. Everyone thinks their parent's a narcissist. Everyone needs to just chill out. But that's not obviously satisfactory to... There are people who have narcissistic parents and that suffer narcissistic abuse. And the abuse is not just a stubborn parent who won't admit something. That might be an emotionally immature parent. It's instead Well, it's a parent who's aggressive and is going to demand compliance of a narrative or behavior and is not going to let up. And if they don't let up, then they are going to use tactics to manipulate, one of which can be abandonment and cutting you out, or guilting you, or reputation destruction, or violence, So it's circumstances like that where I think you need a third party. I don't think public education on this can do merit to the intricacies of really like what's involved in navigating this in a way that ends in your health. I think that the safest thing to do with someone who genuinely, like you're talking like diagnostically fits narcissistic personality disorder, not in the colloquial kind of like TikTok way, but like in the real sense, like get distance, get a third party involved, meaning a therapist or a professional that can help you navigate the intricacies. You're likely going to need a third party helping you dialogue. And even that is not a guarantee of success. There's lots of protective advice like that you can read online, like gray rocking and everything else, like that kind of protect you from the assaults, the manipulative tactics. But I think in terms of repair, that I've never seen someone with a narcissistic personality disorder repair without a third party. And I have seen repair happen with third parties. That feels actually controversial to say. It'd be easy also. The low-hanging fruit is like, well, narcissists can never change and never repair, and they're all hopeless. And I don't think that's true either. I think narcissism is a spectrum. Obviously, there are people who are so committed to their dysfunction that repair is not possible, but there's different circumstances where people can heal and grow, and it's slow, hard, arduous, but possible. I think that is in the clinical literature. That's undisputed. In pop psychology world, that's disputed, but there's no data to say that it's impossible. Like if someone scores high on that, on the various narcissistic, batteries that we have, that they never repair their relationships. That's not true. Okay, all right. Someone paid $10. Oh wow. So for those of you who don't know, on YouTube you can do a thing called super chats, and that means that you pay money and then you get this little highlighted thing, and I guess that means I'm supposed to answer this question. That's the incentive. What's happening is I'm part of a Pavlovian conspiracy. I'm being trained like those dogs in the cage to do what you tell me to do, which is, here's the reinforcement, here's $10. Now answer my question, and I'm gonna comply. Here I go. How to prevent estrangement as a divorced schizoid dad? Oh, okay, I'll define that term in a minute. How to prevent estrangement as a divorced schizoid dad of a 4-year-old boy. Only get to see him on holidays, like summers, winters. Unfortunately, his mom's highly conflictual, likely due to AVPD or PTSD. So possible spectrum stuff there, autism perhaps. All right, wow. Well, okay. Schizoid. That word has a lot of different definitions in it. It has a long history, that word. Let's just say generally, just without going into a big history lesson, avoidant might be a fine replacement. Obviously, that there's a Venn diagram that doesn't completely overlay, but an avoidant dad, a dad who's withdrawn, perhaps very intellectual. Maybe there's social anxiety mixed in there. Maybe there's a difficulty with emotional engagement and warmth, not entirely comfortable in his body, and engages things more mechanistically. So that's like the general sense of the word schizoid. There's also schizoid personality disorders. I'm not going to assume that's what he means. That has a different nuance to it, but generally the term schizoid kind of has that connotation in the academic literature. Goes back really far. The issue with schizoids is that they try to solve everything in their brains. They float up. Like I have this analogy that I use with schizoid patients where it's like sometimes it's easy like a balloon. Like you'll float up into the sky and you'll get so high that the atmosphere kind of makes you pop, and then you kind of fall apart and you can fall back down to the ground and everything feels like you're spinning around in chaos, kind of like you're falling in midair and you can't grab onto anything. And so it feels like the analysis and mental figuring it out is going to save you. But the further you spin out into your analyses, the more you actually leave reality. You get off the ground. You drift further and further away from reality consensus, and it's like you drift off into the air until a point when you pop, and then you're like free falling, and then you feel hopeless, and you can crash into a depression pretty intensely. My guess is that's happened in small ways throughout your life if you do align with that label, the schizoid. So the backwards advice for the schizoid is you actually need to lower the activity in your brain and get more grounded and into your feels. And feelings are obviously difficult and chaotic and don't obey the same causal, deductive, whatever, that mental activity does. And but likely the emotional resonance that you offer to your son is going to be the foundation of the warmth he feels towards you. And so this has less to do with doing it right and more so to get near him and then to allow him to emotionally affect you. And that's complicated because I think that for most schizoids, what they experience with young kids is irritation and anger. And so it's like, what am I supposed to like feel my anger and get mad at him? That's not going to help. And then the fix is somewhat of you need a place to talk about your irritation and anger, to explore those emotions of irritation and anger. Your son shouldn't explore it with you. You're right, you shouldn't express anger and irritation towards your son, but you should have a friend or a therapist where you can talk about how stimulating, overstimulating, frustrating, and overwhelming your relationship with your son is, and perhaps even your divorce and the particularities of how you feel towards his mother. And it sounds like also your grief that you can't spend more time with him. It could be that you feel you don't feel as irritated and frustrated as I'm letting on but you want to connect. You want to connect emotionally to him. Like you want to have a good time, and you feel like you're not. You feel like he's uncomfortable. He just wants to go back to mom. And I would say that also processing your grief and sadness around that with someone makes a lot of sense. You need someone in your life to talk about the sadness with. It does need to come out. It needs to be seen and witnessed. Because the problem is like if you shut up the grief, if you shut up the anger, if you shut up the fear, you just bottle that up, it's going to push you higher into the clouds like a balloon, and then it's going to raise your mental activity, and then you're not going to have access to the positive emotion. The old rule is like positive emotions and negative emotions that come out of the same pipe. So if you shut off the negative ones, then the positive ones are also shut off. And you're going to need those positive emotions to warmly connect with your kid. And so it's paying attention to what he likes and then emotionally resonating and enjoying it with him. So it's not just taking him to the trampoline park because he likes trampolines. It's jumping on the trampolines with him and then laughing and kind of getting giddy with him. And that has to be natural. But what you're going to be tempted to do from a schizoid point of view is, well, you're going to be analyzing if you're expressing it enough, or if you're laughing correctly, or if you're jumping enough, or if he's happy, or if you are doing it right. And you have to draw your attention, right? Attention down to the body and be like, how does it feel for me to jump on the trampoline? Am I having fun? How does it feel for me to fall into the ball pit? How does it feel for me to watch him fall into the ball pit? What emotions does that rise up? And motion literally just means motion, movement in the body, right? Movement in the body. The stomach rises. I want to take a deeper breath. My shoulders relax. My cheeks raise into a smile. That's what I mean. No one describes that concretely. Schizoids need very, very specific concrete descriptions like that. What do I feel when I'm with him? And then express it and then say out loud the things that you're feeling. Oh, I love being with you. I love being your dad. This is so fun. I'm having so much fun. What the schizoid thinks they're supposed to do is like, are you having fun? Are you having a good time? Is this good? Are you enjoying yourself? Do you want anything? Do you want popcorn? Like, what's going on? And the funny thing is like, it's actually the opposite. The kid needs to hear that dad loves being around him. And that will create a lot of warmth. I love being around you. Oh, this is so much fun. I love being with you. I'm happy even if we're not on trampolines. We could be at home and I'm going to watch you play video games. He's young for video games, but as he gets older, can I just sit and watch? And then you just talk about how much you're enjoying it. And you're thinking out loud. I call it broadcasting. You're like broadcasting what you're seeing. Oh, you just jumped off that ledge, 4-year-old at the trampoline park. You just jumped off that ledge. You're having such a great time. Like, wow, that was so high. That was such a big jump. Oh, I'm so impressed. You know, that's the ingredients that stack up the goodwill and rapport that are going to impact your relationship with your kid. I hope that's helpful. I'll end it there because I've already taken a good amount of time. He responds, "Thanks for taking up my question. So far, it sounds relatable, especially with my ChatGPT use. But I would say I'm doing all right. Might be highly functional. I hope. Good. Highly functional. Don't we all wish to be highly functional? Yeah. Praise God. Okay. Go to a rage room. No, it can't. It's not that the anger needs to leave. It's that the anger needs to be witnessed. It needs to be witnessed by another person. That's actually a common misconception. It's like, I need to go like hit a couch or yell. And it's like, no. It's actually not the emotion getting out. It's like you're just like, it's not literally like you're a balloon that needs to let air out. It's you need emotions that need to be held by another human being. You need the mirror neurons. You need the mapping. You need the hormonal shift that happens when another human sees the emotion. That's actually what matters. If not, it just functions. There's this whole thing called catharsis that happened earlier in psych world that we thought was the key to everything, and it wasn't. It has to be shared. All right, let's go over to Instagram. We having fun? Roop. Okay, hold on. Let me change the scene. I'm having fun. So what we do, I should have just set up these scenes earlier in OBS and edited them so that you all don't have to. Okay, here, hold on. After he rode into the sunset, he looked at his horse, Old Faithful, and said, I could really use a drink. The horse reminded him that he's a recovering alcoholic and he should not be drinking right now. And then he said to his horse, "Well, Faithful, sometimes a cowboy, when it's Christmas time and all he has is a horse in the open road, needs a good whiskey." And then the horse said, "Nope," and then rode off to the nearest AA meeting. The cowboy was furious. But, lo and behold, the AA meeting had a Christmas party going and he had a pretty good time. And lots of alcohol-free liquids that quenched his thirst completely. The end. Sorry. All right, yeah, Instagram is saying you need your emotions held by another human being. That's true. Oh, more people are buying questions on YouTube. All right, so now my integrity is being tested. Am I going to answer questions for free on Instagram? Or am I going to be a shill and answer the questions that people are paying me for on YouTube? Wow. How can I be bought for $10? That's the question. Maybe. Let's answer questions on Instagram, and then I'll go scoop up the questions in the super chats on YouTube. Best of both worlds. Integrity and $10. Okay. Dance, monkey dance. Let's look through here. Oh yeah, nobody thinks I should be in grief. Sharing it with people makes them uncomfortable. You're sharing it with the wrong people. Grief.com, David Kessler's group. Oh, it's incredible. You gotta go see David Kessler's group at grief.com. I studied under him for years. He's the best in the world. You gotta check him out. Those people will hold the space for you. They're not gonna shame you, I promise. Someone says, in reference to my comment, you can't just do a rage room. You need to have it witnessed. Can it be witnessed in a rage room? I don't know. As a therapist, I've never gone with a client to go to a rage room. I mean, the real science of it is just like there needs to be almost like an energetic release, and then like a completion of the movement that is stuck in the body. So you could think like, let's say you're angry that your dad hit you. The the stuff that's stuck up in the body are likely the defenses or even the anger that you're holding towards your dad, in all likelihood that you wanted to defend yourself and maybe even hit him back, that you were angry. But you didn't hit him back, obviously because you're a kid, and that would provoke him and that would threaten your safety. So you didn't. It's all stuck. All of the anger towards your dad for hitting you is stuck up in your body, and it's pent up. And so you could think like, oh, I need to let that out. Now, obviously, what you don't do is you go hit somebody, like, and then go into a rage room and hitting a bunch of stuff. Like, actually, we've done studies on this. If you do that, it's shown to increase the feelings of anger and increase the feelings of distress that you feel. But if you're in therapy, and let's say you're using somatic experiencing, and you're tuning into that memory, and you notice that energy, hold up in the body. Maybe there are movements, defenses, like thrusts, pushes, like things that are a lot less abstract and literally just like your body wanting to defend itself or push away, because that's what that is. Like the desire to fight back, is a desire to, engage, to shake him, like, hello, wake up, you're hitting a kid, like, I need you, and you're being violent towards me and you're hurting me. So there can be an exploration of those movements. So like you might somatically engage in the push as you talk about it. You yell out loud, no, get away from me. And then you push, or you push on the table, like, no, like, and you push. And then the therapeutic effect of that isn't just, I took a glass and smashed it. It's like there was a physical matching to the emotion that I'm expressing that was witnessed by another person. And specifically, I go up into arousal and then I come down out of arousal. I come up, arousal meaning like intensity or like the heart rate, not sexual arousal. So like you go in, expression that matches with the body. Sometimes it's a jump, sometimes it's a run, sometimes it's a push, sometimes it's a grab. And then you come back down. And then you find that there's a huge release, and then it's like, whoa, all that pain in my neck went away, that I've chronically had forever. And it's like, yep. It's like it needed to be engaged and then put to rest. That's a little different than let's go to a rage room, think about your dad, put on some metal music, and just smash. That will likely make it worse. Do those distinctions make sense? As a counselor, how do you process your feelings when you're feeling burnt out or start to feel prejudiced? I don't feel burnt out or prejudiced. I'm Matthias Barker. I'm fine. I have people in my life that I am vulnerable with and that I express all the conflicting emotions. I have a Monday meeting. I actually had it just this morning because he was busy yesterday with my friend Zach Mearcreeps. You can find him on Instagram. Zach Mearcreeps. He's a preacher friend that is like my big brother, and I love him. And I've known him since I was 15. And we meet every week, and I just usually cry or complain or we just crack jokes the whole time. And he sees me, he hears me, he sees the frustrations, he holds space for me, and just he knows me well. He knows me before I was creator therapist Matthias. He knew me when I was, punk 15-year-old high school Matthias, and he just cares for me as a big brother does, and I pray and care for him. That's one of them. My wife, she sees the real me. I express the frustrations and the burnout and the all this and that. I have a pretty vulnerable relationship with my team, so my CEO Shanna and my assistant Brenda and my video editors and everyone else. Like, I'm pretty open when I'm feeling tired, and then we make plans to take things off my plate and to give rest days and even to push off, launches. Like if I'm opening up the estrangement membership, estrangement.com or something, then we can push off things or slow things down if I'm feeling tired. It's like letting yourself be a human being. That's what I didn't do well for the first half of my career. Was I thought that I was supposed to I thought I was just being lazy and I needed to push through and just buck up and stop being a little wimp. And that does work to a point. There are times you need to buck up. But bucking up, it means you're in a state of emergency. Bucking up means that like there's a real stake, and then there's times in life where you have flexibility, and you're in a marathon, not a sprint. Like bucking up is sprint language. Bucking up, bearing through is great when you're sprinting. Like if you're running away from a bear, you shouldn't like stop and explore your emotions and be vulnerable. Like you just need to get away from the bear. Like sorry if you're not in the mood, sorry if you're tired, sorry if you're having a bad day, if you feel a little depressed. Like you need to run away from the bear, And so there's no space for feeling feelings when you're just running away from a bear outside of the terror and anger or whatever that gets you away from the bear. So in places of emergency, you repress, you decompartmentalize. That's adaptive. That's why we do that. Doesn't that make sense? Like we should do that. That's what's adaptive. But then when you're in marathons, your marriage is a marathon. So you can't just avoid everything and just buck up and just be like, be a good housewife or be a good husband and just work and bring in an income and deny all your dreams and don't bring up your hobbies or interests or personal whatever because you need to like just support the family. It's like you'll burn out because you're using an emergency mindset for a long game, which is going to expand over decades. And then you're all like, wow, like all I've been doing is like working and then taking care of everyone else's needs. And I haven't done anything fun for me. And it's like, that sounds lame. That sounds like, oh, I'm being a little whiny, whatever. You would be if you were in an emergency. Like if you're in World War II and you're in the trenches and you're like, you know what? I haven't done something fun for me in a while. Then everyone in the trench is going to look at you like, come on, come on, pull yourself together, you pansy. And but if you're at home, in your life, in a marathon of life, and you never do something fun, like you're never going to go hunting, you're never going to go fish. A man sometimes just needs the company of some quiet fish. Like, you're going to burn out because you're using an emergency mindset and all the morale and all the moral pillars that we all acknowledge in times of emergency. Like man up for long games, which is just you're not thinking critically. You're not thinking strategically. When you're playing long games, you need to settle down and pay attention to the stress that you're taking on in your body and then rest and recuperate. So I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. Like I'm a therapist and I'm doing work with parent-child estrangement and this community that I have with estranged parents and kids. If I need to push off a launch because I'm exhausted, that's fine because I'm going to be doing this for years, 20 years. I'll be here. If I was only doing this, I don't know. If there's a shorter time frame, then I might pull myself together because it's just like a short sprint. Like, do you get the idea? I think you get the idea. It's like we confuse those mentalities sometimes and really punish ourselves and put ourselves into really terrible situations because we don't rightly understand that. So how do you as a counselor process your feelings? You have people in your life that you process with. How do you prevent getting burnt out? You rest when you're tired, when you're playing marathon games, and then you buck up when you're playing sprint games, which some of them are. Like I don't know, when my kid was being born, I was tired, but I stay up in the night. I deal with it because my wife was giving birth, and I'm not going to sleep while she's giving birth. I actually did sleep on the third one. I was taking a really heavy medication that I was prescribed, and part of the effect was it was really sedative, and I could not stay awake. I was so tired. I was like forcing myself to stay awake. I dunked cold water on my face. I was standing up. I'm like, I am awake, and I was getting dizzy and like losing my balance. And then I threw up out of exhaustion, which was weird. And then I like fell on the ground and I was like trying to keep my eyes open. And then the midwife that was there was like, just go lay down. And I'm like, no, I'm up. Then I passed out, and then I woke up 30 minutes before the baby was there. And probably shouldn't have shared that story publicly. Makes me look like a dope, but hey, it's the truth. It's the truth. The medication was so intense. It was so hard to get off. I don't take that medication anymore. My sleep was messed up for like 6 months. It was the sedative effects of it were so intense. Yeah, I'll live it down. I'll be an extra good dad to that kid. Yeah, I'll make up for it. What am I talking about? This is the problem with lives. They shouldn't let me do this live. You're so right. There's a lot, and very few Christian therapists seek help. Would love to hear more about your path model. What's my path model? I have a path model? I don't have a path model. This is the first I'm hearing of it. What's my path model? Do I have a Christian path model? All right, let's come up with a path model. What's P stand for, everybody? What's my path model? If you want to avoid burnout, you need pizza, advice from your friends, two naps a day, all right. I thought this was going to be funnier than it was. I thought I was going to be able to come up with a bit on the spot, and I'm realizing, Matthias, you need to move on. I don't have a path model. Oh, pizza, patience. Oh, hold on. The people do, though. The people have a path model. Here it is. The chat just kicked in. Patience, that's better. Okay, how do you avoid burnout? Patience. That's a good one. Realio. What? Hold on. Let me get back. What else? Praise. Ooh, that's a good one too. I could do praise. A walk. There's no W in path. All right, we're abandoning ship. This is dumb. All right. Next question. Let's go over to YouTube. What were those fancy YouTube questions? Oh wait. Can't get over to YouTube. Why? Why can't I get over to YouTube? We're going over. We're going to YouTube because the people pay me over there. Super chats. Wow. Aha. Okay. Sorry for the poor OBS preparation. All right, taking super chats. What are your questions? Hold on, we're almost there. Sorry, team. Whoop. All right. Whew. I should have done more cowboy music during all that. Wow, it is glitching and not working. All right. Sorry, I didn't know how live works. New here. That's okay. Did you have another question? Was that it? You accidentally... I can give you the $10 back. You don't need to pay me $10 just to say that. Did you have a question? You're still here. Awareness? Oh, yeah. How's it going? Did you have a question? Outside of accidentally making something? I'll send you the $10 back. All right, what other questions do we have on YouTube? You can just type it in to the chat, and you don't have to pay the money again. I'll find your question. What would you suggest doing? Oh, question, but it was too long for one. Oh, okay. Well, type it out in the chat. You should be able to type it out in the chat, even if it's longer here. I'll just acknowledge that your super chat means you get to go up to the top. I'll answer this first question as you're typing it out, though. What would you suggest doing if your partner has a diagnosed avoidant personality disorder and has now decided that you have emotionally abused her? Hold on, a diagnosed avoidant personality disorder? That is super hard to get. It's possible that you had a therapist say that you're avoidant, that you have an avoidant attachment. But if she's clinically been given avoidant personality disorder, if you look at the diagnostic criteria for that, that's a pretty hefty struggle. I'm not trying to say anything negative about it. I'm just double checking, because that does have implications on how you navigate things. Has now decided you've emotionally abused her. Man. Here's the thing. I think we can zoom out. If you feel like you're being accused of something that's false, if you're being accused of a falsehood, either by exaggeration or just a blatant lie, I think that there's two things you can do. One is you can get really resistant and frustrated and just push them away and be like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. And I just don't see that ending in any sort of like repair. So, but that might not be your goal. You might just want to set a boundary and kind of leave the relationship. And if it's your ex, then maybe not. If you're wanting to repair the relationship, like maybe with a family member, maybe with an ex, whatever, then what you do is you take accountability for the facts and you look for the hurt underneath of the accusation. Because here's the thing, like lies take root in soil where there's hurt. Does that make sense? So like, you've probably seen me use this analogy before, but let's say there's a flower box with a bunch of dirt in it, and there's like a weed that kind of grows up. All right, so you have this weed. Let's make this flower box just a little bit more. Okay, that wasn't even, wow. Okay, anyway. So, okay, you can't control the lie. You emotionally abused me. Can't control this. My question is like, well, what about the hurt? Because like there's a setting where the lie took place that made it so that this lie was intelligible. And that's not me blaming you for it. That's just, YouTube just reset for me. Sorry. That's not me blaming you for it. That's just me saying just the reality of it. Like if I told you that your golden retriever hates your guts, you would look at me and be like, there's not a hateful bone in that dog's body. What are you talking about? No, my golden retriever doesn't hate my guts. So it's like there's no setting where a lie like that could even take root. And so my question is like, is there a setting where the lie can take root? Is there any hurt? Are there ways that you navigated the relationship where you contributed to the hurt? And there's almost always a yes to that. Like you take accountability for that. So that could look like saying something like, hey, I think there's been times when I didn't pay attention to what you needed in our relationship. Times that I preferred my own needs over your own, where I didn't hold space for what you were feeling in the moment. There's times I was selfish, times that I didn't see you. Like any romantic relationship, there's points where that was likely true. Can you take accountability for that? And often, once you start taking some accountability for the hurt and in that kind of way, the accusations soften, and it's like the lie kind of like comes back down to the ground a little bit, and then you can have a more regulated conversation. Sometimes, if they have a personality disorder, you might need a third party. You might need a therapist to walk through it. So then you decide, do I want couples therapy with this person to maybe try to work through this, or is this something that I don't want to continue to pursue? That's really the crossroad. That's the only crossroad. Okay. Let's go to this super chat question. Let me make sure I was getting all the context here. My mother throws away all my stuff without asking, and I tried to assert boundaries with parents of respecting my stuff and my boundaries, but they don't even acknowledge the problem. Do you live with your parents? How do they get access to your stuff? I mean, just practically. I mean, don't get your stuff around them. You've probably thought of that though. So the reality is that some people need to live with parents even into adulthood because there's just economic reasons or health reasons, and so what do you do when someone's not respecting your stuff? The two options are a confrontation or a boundary. But a boundary has to have the ability to pull back, or the ability to enforce. So when I have like a property boundary, like the reason you can't come over and trim my bushes is because then I'm gonna say I'm gonna call the police if you don't stop trimming my bushes. I'm gonna get the cops. They're gonna tackle you with your shears and stop you from trimming the bushes, and then I'm gonna get a restraining order between you and my bushes. Okay, fine. So there's an authority that I can appeal to that enforces the boundary. That's one option. Or the boundary is like, I'm going to retreat. I'm going to pull back. So I'm going to come over to your house, and I don't want you to throw things at me. And if you throw things at me, I'm going to leave. So that's like there's a cause and effect within a boundary. But if you don't have any recourse to leave, let's say that like economically or health-wise or whatever, you're living with your parents and they have access to your stuff. You can't lock it up. You can't lock your door, whatever. If you can't leave, then the only options are you either consent to the behavior in the sense of like, okay, well, she's always going to use my gallon of milk, or she's going to throw away the clothes that she doesn't like, or she's going to do this. Like, that's just part of the, let's say, the agreement of living there. You could think about it like that. I don't know if this sounds like a weird option, but it actually is a legitimate one that isn't necessarily unhealthy. As you could say, all right, if you were reading on the roommate disclosure, you can room here, but I'm going to throw away your stuff. Sometimes. You don't know what stuff or when, but that's part of the agreement. You're allowed to sign on the dotted line and consent to that. It's worth it. I would rather live here with the occasional throwing away of my stuff than go get my own place and pay rent, because maybe financially you're not in a space to do that. So that's an okay thing to do. And so then in that case, you wouldn't then hold resentment and get frustrated and angry that they're throwing away your stuff. You're like, that's just kind of part of the recipe. Part of me living here is that mom's going to make comments. Mom's going to throw away stuff. Dad's going to da-da-da-da-da. Like, all right. I mean, it's no different technically than like having a roommate with a really loud alarm that goes off, early in the morning, like for work. And you can tell them, stop using that loud alarm. But eventually you just have to decide like, okay, am I going to room with this person? Part of rooming with this person is they have a loud alarm in the morning. So I'm either going to put up with that or I'm not. And so your recourse is either outside enforcement or you retreating. And so, it sounds like the question underneath the question is like, how do I convince mom to stop throwing away my stuff? And in that case, you're making a request. And I think in a request, like we were saying earlier, you make an appeal to their goodwill and you acknowledge their, possible good intentions. Not that they were good. I'm just saying that it could be that she was trying to help, or she didn't know, or she thinks that you shouldn't be wearing something like that. Like, she has some sort of misguided whatever intention. The sad just truth, like just the pragmatic truth, is if you want to build goodwill with someone and have them agree to change their behavior, to negotiate, you have to meet them where they're at and then try to elicit a positive response from them. And a way you do that is by infusing warmth and understanding into the conversation. You can come at them with a demand, stop throwing away my stuff, and then you could shame them. Oh my gosh, you're so terrible. But I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying generally. Or you can try to share your experience, evoke their empathy a bit. Hey, it's been hard. You've been throwing away my stuff, and I love that stuff, and it's important, and I bought it, and it makes me feel uncomfortable staying here when you do that. But you do so in a way that you try to communicate respect in a way that keeps them regulated, and then the intricacies of that are going to determine what you do next. How she responds to that determines whether you're going to leave or whether you're going to put up with it. That's the end of that road. You try to request, they either comply or don't. You could try to send more inviting requests. We find out. Then at the end of that, it's either I'm going to retreat or I'm going to enforce. If I can't enforce, because, maybe you'll call the police on your mom for throwing away your shirt. Maybe, but I don't recommend it. Then it's like, okay, well, am I going to stay here knowing that she's going to throw away my stuff? Or am I going to go find my own place? Does that make sense? That's the lay of the land, technically. Feel free to send a follow-up there. Okay, a little bit of follow-up. When I try to talk about it to assert my boundaries, it ends with my dad getting aggressive. And he even ended in an altercation. I love him, but I don't know what to do anymore. Yeah, I recently moved back. Yeah, long story. Yeah, I get it. I lost my home due to a traumatic situation. Asked me to move back. Yeah. I'm not just throwing away. It's asserting boundaries without altercations. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that's happening. It's not fair. Oh, sounds awful. The two places I would look if I were your therapist, I'm not your therapist. This is just a Q&A. But the two places I would ask is just like, all right, tell me about the conversation when you tried to assert your boundaries. You might have done that in a way that wasn't very soft and gentle. I'm not saying you need to. I'm not shaming you when I say that. I'm just saying pragmatically, the way we make requests is we try to build goodwill with the other person. You have a sense of justice where it's wrong that they're throwing away your stuff. That's understandable. But again, just the pragmatic effectiveness is going to come when we shift towards a more gentle attitude, trying to negotiate that. So I'd explore that. Maybe you were gentle. Maybe you were totally like cool. You came to them in a very grounded, regulated way, and they were just belligerent. I mean, perhaps. So if that's the case, then I would ask like, okay, well, we're going to look probably then for different homing arrangements. And there's lots of different programs and shelters and ways that you can have housing that's even comfortable. Like, I just think that we all have in our head, like the kind of like, let's say, like a homeless shelter. And then we think like, oh gosh, like, well, I can't go there. That's awful. But the reality is that there's lots of resources available for students, mothers, women, men who don't have living accommodations and affordable housing, and that programs that get people on their feet and get people to a place where they can recover from a traumatic situation like you described, that aren't what the Hollywood homeless shelter trope looks like it is. I know that sounds like a weird point to double down on, because I think for so many people that's just so out of mind. It's like, oh, I'd never do that. But I'm like, I don't know. Like, I've been in those programs and served in nonprofits and organizations that offer affordable care for people that need to get on their feet, and not just from drug addictions or from like some of those traumatic circumstances, but also people who just lose a job, they get evicted, they're in between places, they need to get back on the majority of people in those programs are transient, meaning they kind of like step in, they get resources for a bit, and then they step out because maybe it's better than being at home. So then we decide, is it better being at home or trying to navigate that? Like, is it better being at home with a mom who steals my stuff and I can't really bring this up or else dad gets mad? Option A. Or am I going to go explore options that allow me to kind of have more agency to determine my environment? But it's just going to be harder to kind of step into some of those programs. A therapist can help you navigate that, by the way. If you have health insurance, hope you do. You can have a therapist that can help figure out which program is best, get into the program, help you kind of process what it is, what your options are, if there's something better, and then kind of build an action plan to kind of get you back on your feet. I've done that several times. Yeah, looking into that, yes, I agree. Looking into that, I agree. I guess I still carry hope that our relationship can be healed somehow. I often find that it's really hard to heal a relationship with your parents when you're living with them. I don't know if I've, with an adult, I don't think I've seen that with an adult happen. Clearly, like, family counseling works with teenagers and kids, like, but as an adult, yeah, I think that the relationship is almost always benefited when you're not living together. There's something about living together and the dependence that makes genuine conflict and negotiation hard, because there's a power differential. Someone's in need. So that makes the confrontation almost impossible. Yeah, I believe you. You say I try in so many ways. It's crazy. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's hard. All right. Any other $10 tips that I'm missing? Nope. Okay, we're back. That's so funny. Super chats. How about it? Let's do one more question and then I gotta go. Took my time on this one. Been here for a bit. Don asks, why all the labels? While I understand the need therapeutically, the basic healing is about owning our emotions, feelings individually as our feelings, not dependent or solely caused by another. I'm not sure I understand the question or the statement. Mental health labels are helpful because then we can do research around them. We can define the scope of a struggle and then do research to find out, like, hey, people who have that collage of struggles, depression, so low energy, sad mood, suicidal ideation, whatever. It's like for people who deal with that cluster of symptoms, then we can test different treatments to see if those treatments help that cluster. And then you could say, like, okay, as far as you relate to that cluster, maybe some of these treatments can be efficacious for you. That's the idea. I think mental health diagnoses are fine. When they become like your identity, like, that ain't good. Because you're not just a cluster of negative symptoms. You're a human being. Matthias, do parents estrange from children? Yes, all the time. Parents disown children. The majority of human history, the fear was that the parents were going to disown the children. It's only recently that's been flipped. Oh, Don says, I mean within therapy with the client's estrangement. Yeah, I mean, like diagnosing your parent or your kid secondhand, that's never wise. That's never wise for the therapist to guess, like, oh, I wonder if your mom's a narc, or I wonder if your dad is this or that. With the exception of addictions. I mean, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to, how much does he drink? You can tell if someone's an addict, pretty quick. But I think that, you can't like call autism or ADHD or something from the bleachers and just be like, yeah, your parent is probably this, that, or the other. Yeah, I don't think that's wise. I don't do that. I don't understand this question, Sebastian. I was trying. I read it 2 or 3 times. Do you think that it is possible to have a pattern of not building or developing deep relationships because growing up without deep relationships, but at the same time wanting those deep relationships? Look at me. What did you say? Sebastian, I'm going to ask you to resubmit that question. I'll answer it for you. I will. Hold on, is there a hair sticking out of my head? Oh, dang it, we're going to have to redo the whole live. Shoot. When do you usually go live? I go live on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sebastian says, I'll paraphrase. Good. Thank you. I'm going to check in on Instagram. How are we doing over there? Sebastian's paraphrasing, and then we'll wrap it up after that. No one's commenting on Instagram. Lots of people joining. No one's commenting. I don't like the awkward silence. Some people are saying, I understand Sebastian's question. It's good. Reframe it for me. Someone help me out. I'm realizing that whole little trail we did on the path model was actually in response to another person who created the path model, and there was a little dialogue happening in the chat, and then I misinterpreted it as someone asking, about my path model, and I don't have a path model. And so I started with pizza and naps. 2 of them, actually. Sorry, unsung empath. Stole your fire there. Sebastian, you haven't paraphrased. All right, we're going to wrap up in a sec. All right, someone on Instagram says, is he saying that he has the desire to have deep relationships but grew up around people who didn't show him how to build those? Maybe a fear or avoidance to try? Growing up without deep relationships sort of created a difficulty on keeping deep relationships than having them because always seeing them go. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. That makes sense. Yep, Don says something similar. He did not have deep relationships but wants them, and he's possibly gotten into developing a practice of keeping relationships at bay. Good. Yeah, I mean, because it's the disappointment, right? It's like the fear of loss. Like it just matters so much to you. And you can feel it, even if you haven't had deep relationships. You can feel the gap because you're kind of made for it. Like you have all the design and the neurology and the just genuine emotional need to have deep relationship. And so it's like, it's not an option. You have emotional needs, not just physical needs. We're not like fish. If you can just give us some fishy food, then we're good, and keep our tank the right temp, then we're set. Like we have emotional needs, personal needs around self-expression and identity and connection and vulnerability and meaning making and purpose, and that we have a soul. We're not just these animals, and so it's a complete need. And if you didn't grow up with it, what you did grow up with is this big hole. And I think what happens is that the hole feels infinite. The hole feels like there's no bottom. It feels like a bottomless pit of neediness, sadness, loss, grief, depression, whatever. And so then relationships come in your life that touch on that a little bit, and you want the relationship to fill the hole. But it can't, because no one person can. No romantic partner can. No amount of self-expression can. It's not like if your art finally got recognized or you went viral on social media, then that would fill. Or if your business did well and you got people try to fill it with wealth and money and reputation and pleasure and all the things, it doesn't work, because it's kind of a complex hole in your heart. Some of it has to do with some of the hole is the dysfunctional beliefs that you believe about yourself. It's the dysfunctional beliefs. Distortions in how you see the world. And so it's like these weird filters that then prevent you from welcoming people in, because maybe, like, for example, like let's say you have a belief that people always reject me. Once people find out the real me, they'll lose interest and they'll leave. That's a pretty common one. I held that one for a while. Then like you're always kind of keeping your hand up, you're always kind of keeping them a little bit further back, and then when you let them in, sometimes you overshare. Because like you're just starving, and so it's kind of like when you're starving and you're famished, and so you kind of rah, and then that can be overwhelming to the other person, and then they pull back, and so like you're finally vulnerable, you finally open up with someone, and then they pull back. Or maybe it's a romantic partner that you finally kind of open yourself up, but for reasons that probably actually have to do with the relationship, not because of your vulnerability, but just because of other dysfunctional patterns. The relationship doesn't end up working, and then you feel so betrayed, so abandoned, because it was like, dang, the one person I let see the void that made me feel something just left. And I guess that means I'll always be alone. And you have all these distorted conclusions. I'll always be alone. I deserve to be alone. I don't deserve love. Like you have all these, and they're childish. Like, and I don't mean that in like some insult way. I just mean that like technically, like they're the conclusions a child would run to because they're simple. Like children put general labels on things. When I feed my daughter food that she's unfamiliar with, she'll just go, yuck. Like she doesn't say like, oh, well, I'm not really sure about the texture. I'm not really into the texture, yada, yada, yada. It's like, no, it's just yuck. I'm not really sure about the flavor. Like, oh, it needs more salt. Yuck. And I think that in our hurt, in our trauma, we run to really general categories. I don't deserve love. It's not worth being vulnerable. It's like it's these protective layers that prevent any pain from getting in because we're just so overwhelmed. And it makes sense. It's actually adaptive. It's like, the people who were like, let's just avoid snakes, generally, were the ones who survived. The person who stepped in was like, well, what kind of snake is it? That guy got bit, so he's gone. So our ancestors who survived were the ones that were just like, you know what, as a general rule, we don't mess with snakes. So, I mean, there is like some utility in just avoiding it. But again, in the complexity of human relationship, those broad categories, well, that's a short-term game. That's an emergency game. But in the long term, we need complexity. We need to be able to see this person's not supposed to hold the full load of my emotional pain, but they can hold some of it. And they can hold some of it for a short amount of time. And then they need a break. And that doesn't mean I should avoid it or control them or try to manage it. I should be vulnerable about things in safe quantities. And then I'm going to check in and see how they're doing and let them tell me when they're getting full. And then we're going to pause that. And then I'm going to share with other people. And I have a therapist and I have other friends. And so it's like the entire emotional load doesn't land on one person. And then a friendship, like just having like a grown-up perception of friendship is like, good friendships take 5 years to build, probably. And so the desire to have a friend that will like be one of those diehard friends that never leaves your side, you can tell anything to, is a good desire. And if you don't have one of those, it's going to take some time to build it. That doesn't mean that your friends don't like you or love you or aren't trustworthy. It just means patience, pacing. You might have some old friends and they're a mixed bag. Some of them are mature, some of them are immature, and you could really share stuff with them, but they don't have maybe the skills of a full therapist. So there's also expectations that you're not sharing with a friend with the desire for them to help you process your trauma. They don't know how. They shouldn't know how. It's more for the mirroring. It's like, the reason I share this is so someone can look at me and be like, I'm sorry, that sucks. Oh, you shouldn't have had to go through that. That's awful. And that's the point. And then if you want to explore it, ideate, sometimes you'll have like a smart friend who wants to like, kind of think through it with you. But that's what mentors are for, I don't know. I think like you need like a balanced diet. You need a healthy array of people in your life that serve different functions. No one of them is meant to fill all the loneliness. But what you will find is if you kind of develop these friendships over the course of your life, they will be medium deep, shallow to medium for the majority of the relationship. But in aggregate, you have depth. In summary, you have depth. And then you have to be sober-minded about your defenses and the things that you're doing to push people away. Those distorted thoughts that are distorted. And even though they take over you, you need to stop giving them so much attention and control over your behavior. You go to the party even though you don't want to. You are vulnerable even though you're scared. You show up even though you're insecure. Like, you do it with the bad emotion. Because that's how you have corrective experiences. Like, you need to not just know, but experience that you're okay. You can be vulnerable and you will be received, not just rejected. You have to experience that. You can't just know that in your head. You have to do it. Good. Oh, I'm realized I have a doctor's appointment that I'm totally late to. Oh man, I'm going to have to reschedule that. All right, well, I should probably go. Does that answer the question? Hope that helps, Sebastian. Yeah, it really does. I think the more you give in to the distorted beliefs, the more cynical you'll get, because you almost start to see evidence for the cynicism. Yeah, it's a spiral. It just stinks. The whole thing. All right. I care about all of you. That was great. It was fun hanging with you. We'll talk again soon. Loved having Dr. Coleman on. Make sure to check out his Substack. Just search Josh Coleman on Substack and you can find that. He's brilliant. Has so many great things that he's writing about and is often doing op-eds and and papers, Atlantic, New York Times, and stuff like that. But check out his Substack. That's the best place to find him. So grateful. Also, estrangement.com, the estrangement membership that I have, is open right now. It's going to close down in a couple weeks, though. So we're letting new members in. You can go to estrangement.com if you're interested to see it. But it's only a short window, so only a little bit longer. I hope that you all have a wonderful Christmas and a beautiful holiday with your loved ones. And we'll talk again soon. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. Bye for now. All right. See you later.